Hello, everyone, and welcome today. Can you hear me okay? Wonderful, wonderful. I wasn't sure it started on its own. So thank you for joining us today for Process Mapping, Let's Get Visual, our session and skills lab for BB Dev Days. We're so excited to have everyone here. I love all of the GIFs and images that you're putting in the chat. It looks like you guys are really excited too. I want to start off today with some webinar housekeeping. And just to let you know, if the audio for this webinar is being broadcast through your computer speakers, and if you want to refresh your browser for audio or technical issues, sometimes leaving and logging back in can correct those pretty quickly. Recordings will be available afterwards. So 24 hours after this session, it will be available in BB Dev Days. And you can download the slides on the Docs tab to the right of your screen. So right next to chat, you can see Docs. There should be this slide deck and also another attachment there. And then you can use the Q&A to submit questions. Chat is really for the group conversations and messages to DM participants. So let's go ahead and get started, not waste any more time. I am going to kick it off to Sarah Beauregard, who is our wonderful distinguished engineer in operational excellence. So I'll be in the background moderating and answering questions for any of you. And let's go ahead and get started, Sarah.
All right. Thank you, Tiffany. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen today to share the slide deck and walk us through that Tiffany mentioned is in the docs section. There's also a Word document handout in there as well that she mentioned that we'll be using today. So just wanted to call your attention to that one. If you could download it, we'll be using it here during our session together. So go ahead and share. Get us into presentation mode. All right. Well, welcome and thank you for joining today. I am Sarah Beauregard. I'm a distinguished engineer in our operational excellence team here at Blackbaud. I live in Austin, Texas. I enjoy spending time with my daughter and doing a variety of outdoor activities. I love to cook. I would say I'm okay at it, but I really like it. So I'm getting better, I feel like. And a few inspiring causes that I support: Texas 4000, Damn That Cancer, and PanCan. All right, so let's start off with some questions. You don't have to raise your virtual hand or anything, but see if some of these resonate with you. Do these ever happen in your org? Sometimes it's not clear who's supposed to be doing what. Why do we have so much rework or so many errors in the work that we do? Why does it take so long to get something completed? Why didn't that technology we implemented make the process any better? While it might not be able to solve all of these problems in totality, utilizing process mapping can definitely help in these scenarios. So hopefully some of that's going to come through and we'll see that today. So during our time together today, we're going to talk about why process mapping can be impactful to your organization, what it's all about, how we go about doing it, and then we'll have some time for you to get hands-on with it relative to a process in your organization. So let's get going and let's get visual. All right, let's start out with why process mapping can be beneficial for your organization.
Hi, Sarah. Sorry to interrupt. The slides are not forwarding. Let's see. It's not showing presentation.
It's not showing presentation mode?
No.
Okay, sorry about that. Let me go back in here and, I apologize. Hold on one second. Happened to the, sorry there.
Thanks, guys.
Try this one more time. Let me try one more time to share. Can you see that now?
I can see the slide deck, but it's not in presentation mode.
Right. Okay. Is it advancing now?
It is not.
Okay.
You want me to kick it over and
Yes, maybe if you wouldn't mind.
sure. Are we on? What slide are we
I don't
on?
know why that is not working. Let me go ahead and flip this over to my other screen so I can see where we are as you're walking through. We are here on slide, let's go to slide 3, please.
Okay. Let's see. So you'll need to stop sharing and then I can share.
All right, let's do that.
There we go.
All right.
There we
Apologize for, I don't know why it worked in Tiffany and I's rehearsals. So sorry about that, but we will pick up here. So these are the questions we just started off with. Again, kind of teeing up our usage of process mapping within our organization, and we'll talk more about that why. If we can go to the next slide here, this is the agenda that I mentioned we're going to be working through today. And let's go ahead and get to slide, we can go to slide 6 actually. So we're on the why here and why this particular concept of process mapping can be impactful for your organization. So process mapping is crucial for any organization that might be aiming to enhance efficiency. By visualizing workflows, it can really help us identify inefficiencies in our current processes and things like bottlenecks, where we might have people doing redundant work that they weren't even aware of. The clarity here also helps to foster collaboration among teams. So we're going to be talking about the collaborative way that we put these process maps together. That can really lead to good thoughts about streamlining and how we can make the process better from end to end. Process maps can also serve as a documented reference for best practices to ensure that the key processes in our organizations are done consistently and being done the way that we would like for them to be to deliver the most impactful outcome for our customers. We can also use these process maps as well to help drive continuous improvement within our organization. Some other usages as it relates to technology implementations, process maps are helpful in making sure that we are automating a good process. So do we have an efficient process to start out with, and then one that we would like to automate? Knowing where our manual steps are and where the technology can then help us is useful as we implement or think about implementing new technologies, as well as a way to map system interactions or integrations. Maybe in our organization, we use multiple systems or ways to get things done. It's useful to kind of map those out and visualize those as well. So on to the next slide. Here, I want to share a story about a project where we utilized process mapping here at Blackbaud and the results of improving the process. So I know you can't obviously read the current state process map there at the top and the improved state map at the bottom, but that's not the point. The point is here, as you can see, with the current process, this was an implementation process for one of our products. So when the team mapped out the process in the current state, there were 115 process steps. The team used the process map then as a basis to identify opportunities to streamline. They really wanted to shorten the implementation time for this product. And you can see here that through the improvement efforts and the thoughts to streamline here, the team brought this process down to 72 steps. So a 37% reduction, which led to an overall time to live for this product being reduced by 12 weeks. So very impactful usage, and just a quick project and a quick example of the power of process mapping. So if we go to the next slide, let's talk about what process mapping is exactly. And to start that off, on the next slide here, yes, what is a process? Let's just start there, right? So a process consists of a repeatable set of activities that are performed to transform a set of inputs into a set of outputs. So these inputs are things like materials, resources, information, that are transformed through a series of steps that they go through into outputs, which are products or services or some deliverable that our customer cares about. Our customers can be internal customers of our projects, right? Internal to our organization, or they can be external customers, such as our constituents, our donors, our parents, our volunteers, right? Okay, so then on to the next slide. So then process mapping is an activity to document the process by a team of subject matter experts. When we say subject matter experts, we mean by the people that perform these processes every day, the people that are most knowledgeable. They do the work on a daily basis. So those are the folks that we would like to involve in our process mapping activity. So let's see an example here on the next slide. If we talk about what is a process map, then it's a sequence of the process steps and decision points that occur during that process to transform those inputs into outputs. So on the slide here, we have an example that everyone can relate to around making breakfast. Mentioned I like to cook, so I love cooking breakfast. So the process is making breakfast. The inputs to make our breakfast are things like eggs, milk, bread, etc., that through our process are transformed into outputs, right? Our lovely breakfast that you can see there on the right-hand side: scrambled eggs, toast, crisp bacon, and pan-fried potatoes. So as we map our process, we break down the steps involved in making breakfast. So you can see the next level down of detail there: prepare the ingredients, cook the ingredients, and serve the ingredients. And we can yet continue to break down that process into further detail. For cooking the ingredients, that includes cooking bacon, cooking eggs, toasting bread, frying potatoes. So the point here is that there are different levels of detail that we should consider as part of our process mapping exercise. And you can kind of work out with your team of folks that are involved what's the right level of detail that we need to go to achieve the objective that we're trying to achieve through our process mapping activity. All right, so on the next slide then, we are going to take a look at and talk about the type of process map that we are going to be working with here today. And it is called a cross-functional, or sometimes otherwise known as a swim lane process map. So the swim lane process map received its name because organizational responsibilities on the map are separated into zones by horizontal bars, which resemble the lane markings of an Olympic swimming pool. So our swim lane process map makes it very easy to see and identify which steps within the overall process are the responsibility of a certain function or role or department within our organization. So we have here, as you can see, the process map for making breakfast. We have that mapped into one of these cross-functional or swim lane process maps. And our swim lanes, you can see the roles participating in our experience of making breakfast are the dad, the daughter, the son, and the mom. And then you can see the respective steps that each one of those roles perform are noted in their swim lane. All right, so we move to the next slide. I want to take a minute, and I'm hoping for some participation here in the chat to kind of get the thoughts going and to do a little bit of sharing amongst the group as well. As we've been talking so far, does this get you thinking about a process that you would like to maybe map in your organization? And if so, would you mind dropping the name of the process in the chat along with why you might like to develop a process map for it? So if you think back to those questions from earlier, maybe it's a process with unclear roles and responsibilities today, or it has a lot of rework, or there's a lot of errors that are created in the process today. Or maybe it takes longer than you would like for it to. Or maybe you're hiring or bringing in volunteers and you just like a way to communicate how your process works. So let's take just a minute here. I'm going to pause to give you some time to drop your thoughts in the chat before we move forward. Great. See some good thoughts here. Updating constituents' profiles, finance mail receipt opening. Yep. Okay, good. Gifts from receiving to acknowledging. Awesome. Great stuff, you guys. Yes. So continue to drop your thoughts in there. I think it's sometimes helpful to hear from other folks and read these amongst yourself just to kind of get the wheels turning. So we're going to come back to some of these as well here a little bit later as we get hands-on later in our time together. All right, so let's go ahead and move to slide 14. So next slide, we are going to get into the how. Okay, so now we've talked about why this could be impactful, what exactly a process map is, and we're going to start to talk about how we go about creating these. So we're going to first start with identifying the roles that are going to help us create and participate in our process mapping experience. So here are the primary roles that you'll want to consider as part of your process mapping experience. The first is a scribe. This is the person who's actually going to write the detail on the map, developing the process map. Then we have a facilitator. This is going to be the person that's going to facilitate interviewing the subject matter experts, or basically asking the subject matter experts questions about the activities that they perform in the process today. And those subject matter experts, again, are the people that perform the work, so they best know how it works today. And we're going to just ask them to describe the tasks in the process as they work in our current state. All right. So then once we've identified our roles, I want you to be aware of, on the next slide here, some process mapping shapes that we're going to use to develop our process maps. So we're going to talk a little bit about tools to use to do our process mapping here in a minute. Some of those tools have many, many different shapes available to you. We're going to keep it simple here today. And actually, when I'm putting process maps together here at Blackbaud, I like to keep it simple anyway. So just going to use a handful of process mapping shapes to create our maps. So the first shape here we see are some ovals, the green ovals. These are beginning and end points of the process. So we're going to use these visually on our map to show here's the step where this process is starting, and then we're going to use one at the end to show here's where this process ends. All right. Then we're going to use boxes to show the actual tasks or activities where the work is being performed today. Then we're also going to use these decision diamonds, which are around, inspection or decisions that are made that basically create potentially different paths that the work can flow. So an example is something needs to be approved. So the decision diamond might be used to say, is it approved? And then the paths coming out of that decision diamond on our process map would say, yes, okay, it goes this way. No, it's not approved. It goes this way. All right. So that's an example of how we would use a decision diamond. And then the other shape that we're going to be using are arrows to connect up all of these other shapes here in sequential order to create our map. All right. So on to the next slide then, let's talk about the steps involved in creating our process map. So we are going to assign those roles for facilitator and scribe that we talked about. We need to identify the people that actually perform the tasks today, or those subject matter experts, as we've been calling them. We want to invite everyone to a process mapping session. The power of having everybody together to walk through this process and seeing what happens upstream from their work and downstream from their work can be very powerful. So recommend that you do these in a collaborative type of setting. So we're going to get together and map the process. We're going to talk about a couple different ways to do that based on if you are able to be in person, right, all together in the same room, the actual physical room, or if you're doing more of a virtual experience. So everybody is on a, Teams meeting or something in a virtual collaborative environment. So we're going to talk about in person and really recommend kind of using a wall to do kind of step-by-step process mapping. using Post-it notes. We'll talk more about that in a minute. And then if we're doing it virtually, there's some whiteboarding tools and Microsoft Office tools that you can use. And we'll talk about that here in a second as well. So then after we map our process out, if you are using this process map as a way to help improve because something needs to be, or the team feels like there needs to be some improvements made today to either make the process more efficient or more effective, then you can use it as the launching point for brainstorming improvement ideas for your future state process. And if you haven't already created the process map electronically, because you're doing this in person, you'll probably want to do that after the session is over. So everyone has a documented version that they can be referencing. All right. So on our next slide, let's talk just a little bit more about physical process mapping. If you're lucky enough to be in a room together, I love to do them this way. We don't have the opportunity to here very much at Blackbaud anymore because we're a remote first company, which is wonderful. But I do love the in-person process mapping experience if you're able to take advantage of it. You can see the picture here on the wall. So really a best practice being taking some poster size flip chart paper. You can see drawing the different swim lanes there for the different roles or subject matter experts in your process, and then using those sticky notes to document each of the activities. I love the sticky notes because you can move them around. If somebody's like, oh, I forgot I actually do this step and I forgot to mention it, you can, insert steps in very easily. And again, just a nice way for folks to participate in the session by actually, writing down and documenting on the Post-it notes and putting them up on the wall. Some other materials there that you can see that might be helpful if you are facilitating one of these kind of physical process mapping sessions in person. And then the next slide, let's talk about the electronic process map. So if we are, this is after the fact, if you're in person and you're wanting to document it electronically, or if you are in a virtual session and you are actually facilitating by creating an electronic process map, you can definitely use the whiteboarding tools that are available in Microsoft Teams, and there are other, free whiteboard tools that are out there that you can use as well. But the Microsoft Office products work great also. So on the screen here, you can see, PowerPoint, Excel, and Word. Off to the right-hand side, the picture that you see there is where you will find process mapping shapes in any of the Microsoft Office products. So in the insert menu in these products, there is a option for shapes. And then you'll see the circled set of shapes there for flowchart. You'll see the couple of shapes that we've talked about. And as I mentioned, several others that you can feel free to use as well. So any of the Microsoft Office tools will work well to create process maps. Microsoft Visio is a software product designed specifically for process mapping. So I use Visio a lot here at Blackbaud. It's a really great tool, again, specifically designed for process mapping. And then Lucidchart is another product as well that offers some free trials that you can use, but is another process mapping software as well. All right, so on the next slide, just an example of an electronic process map. We're going to see one or two more of these as we finish out our session here today, but just wanted you to kind of have a visual of, I know you can't read this and that's not the point either, but you can see the setup here of the swim lane process map. Always have a title on your map in the upper left-hand corner so everybody knows what the process is that's being mapped here. You have those subject matter expert functions or roles listed down the left-hand side, corresponding to each of the swim lanes. And then you have the boxes and decision diamonds, a couple other shapes used in this one that are connected up by the arrows here. So, and then on this one, you also have some yellow callouts. We'll take a look at that a little bit later as well. Those can be used for things like identifying pain points. A lot of times as you're getting into these process mapping sessions, people are like, oh yeah, I do this today. And man, is it like really manual and it takes me a lot of time and I have this problem with it and this problem. Sometimes it's good to capture those as you go, right? It's kind of free flow of information, but those are great to capture as you're walking out your map. And so you can, capture those in different ways directly on the map related to the process steps as you're talking about them. Okay, so let's get into an example here. We're actually going to talk about how to facilitate through creating the process map. And then we're going to see an example, and then you're going to go ahead and get hands-on here in a minute. So to facilitate our process mapping exercise, we like to kind of do the steps here that we see on the screen. And really the first set of steps around the definition is important in making sure that everyone who's participating is aligned to what is the process that we're mapping, what is the objective that mapping this process is going to help us achieve. So, again, are we trying to troubleshoot some issues or errors that we're having today? Are we trying to figure out how to speed up this process because it takes a long time? Are we trying to improve our customer experience? Like, we're getting a lot of complaints from, our customers, whoever they might be, of this process, and we really need to figure out what's going on. So what is the objective that we're trying to achieve? Then we document out who are those subject matter experts that are participating in the process today. And then we want to call out, where does the process start and stop? So basically, what are those bounds around the process that we're focused on mapping? Where does it start and where does it stop, so that we know we're going to be mapping everything in between. We're going to go ahead and add our swim lanes for each role onto our process map. And then we're going to go through and do a first pass of adding our tasks onto the map, right? So we're going to do that by asking our subject matter experts to describe the work that they do. And sometimes the bullet there around observing subject matter experts performing the process, sometimes show and tell is very powerful. So if you have a process that you're mapping where there's a lot of work done in a specific system or a series of systems or methods, and you want to have basically like a show and tell of the person demonstrating the process and how they do it today, that can be really helpful and insightful for the rest of the participants as well. And just make sure you're identifying that right level of detail that you need to be going to as well with your team. Then we'll want to come back through as a second pass and connect up our tasks with arrows, step 4 there. And then in step 5, we'll always want to make sure once we get through and have our process mapped and drafted, that we put it back in front of our subject matter experts to say, hey, did we capture everything correctly? Is this true? Is this actually how the process is working today? Just for that validation. All right, so on our next slide, we're going to do a quick example and then give you a little time to get started with one here. So we are going to walk through these steps quickly with a process that everyone is probably familiar with, ordering a pizza for delivery. All right, so that's the process that we're going to map. And as the pizza store owner, my objective for why I want to map this process is I've been receiving a lot of complaints from customers about issues such as cold pizza, incorrect toppings, late delivery, and missing items. And so I really need to figure out what's going on here. And in order to do that, I want to understand how the process is working today. So the subject matter experts in this process that I'm going to involve in the process mapping exercise are the cook, the order taker, the delivery driver, and the customer. So I'm going to have somebody who can represent the customer perspective participating with me as well. When we define where the process stops and starts, so the start of this process is when the customer decides to order a pizza, and the process ends when a customer receives their delivered items. Okay, so that's kind of our setup. So on the next slide, then, let's go ahead and take a look at our shell of our swim lane process map that we've set up. So we put our title on the process map, as well as we've created a swim lane for each of those subject matter experts that we just identified that are going to be participating. All right. So we've added those to our map to get us started. Then on the next slide, we're going to go ahead and start adding our tasks. So as the facilitator, I'm going to ask each of the subject matter experts about the tasks that happen in this process and what they do. And the scribe is going to go ahead and document one task per activity box on the map as those are described. and we're going to add them to the right swim lanes in order. I mentioned that the Microsoft Office products, if you're using those, you can use the insert shapes menu to help you go ahead and then create the map with the appropriate shapes on it as you walk through the process. So let's see what that looks like. So we've had this session with our subject matter experts, and here you can see this is the process that we mapped. This is how it works today. For ordering a pizza for delivery, you can see starting up there with the customer, we have the oval of where this process starts. The customer's decided they're hungry and they're going to order a pizza instead of making dinner. And then you can see the process steps there for we've mapped the order taking process based on orders through our customer website or ordering through our website. And so then you can see the activities mapped there. And then you can see how the process flows, the order flows to the order taker, the steps that they perform that flow then to the cook, the steps that they perform, then the finished pizza flowing to the delivery driver with some additional steps that the delivery driver takes, and then ultimately back up to our customer where the customer receives their items and they're eating their pizza. Okay, so let's, next slide here. Want to give us some time to begin a process map for a process in your organization. So maybe it's the one that you placed in the chat. Maybe it's one that you've been thinking about as we've been sitting here going through a bit more detail. But this is the opportunity for you if you want to go ahead and take out that handout that was in the docs section, the word handout. We're going to take about 7 minutes or so here and give you an opportunity to get started. So page 1 of your handout has the same content that you see here on this slide. So why don't we go ahead and start by, you want to go ahead and document in step number 1, defining the process. So go ahead and take a couple minutes and fill out step number 1 there, A through D, for a process that you would like to map in your organization. So let's go ahead and take a couple minutes to do that. All right, let's take about 1 more minute here and then we'll move to our next couple of steps. Okay. So hopefully you had an opportunity to identify the objective that you're hoping that process mapping will achieve, jotted down who the subject matter experts or the different roles are that participate in the process today, and picked a start and stop point or activity for the process that you would like to map. So where will that start and where will that stop? So on page 2 of the handout, there is a blank process map that you can use to start to build out your map. So that is basically just a table that we've created in Microsoft Word. So you can edit that process map. In the top left corner, would recommend that you go ahead and put the name of the process that you're mapping, and then go ahead and add your swim lanes for each role. So the swim lanes themselves have been created, but you can go ahead and add the names of the roles or the functions there on the far left-hand side of each of those lanes for each of the subject matter experts that you identified back on page 1. And then from there, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to start adding some tasks based on your knowledge of the process. So this is just to start practicing a bit in creating the process map. Would recommend after this session that you actually go ahead and have a session with the subject matter experts that you've identified and maybe use your draft as a starting point, and then have those subject matter experts iterate and add to what you have started here, and describing the tasks that they perform and finishing out the map. Maybe even performing some of those show and tell type of actions that we talked about as well, if that might be relevant to the process that you're working on. Stuck on stop. Okay, see that there in the chat. I think this is a real advantage of actually having to think about where you want to stop the process that you're mapping. It really helps to put those kind of scope around the process map and say, okay, you know, how far are we going to go with this? That might change, by the way, as you get into this with your team, but being able to describe that start and stop point for the process and kind of setting that expectation with those that are participating is usually really helpful. You can number the tasks if you'd like to. Yep, I've seen that done before. I've done that before. That can be helpful if you're, you know, wanting to, after you've mapped the process, maybe do a separate activity to document some pain points associated with each of the steps. So if they're numbered, you know, you could easily say, okay, these are all the pain points we have for step 1, and then step 5, we have these pain points, right? So it could be a nice way to draw, you know, some connection to, you know, some next steps in using the process map from there. So, all right, so I'm going to give you guys just a couple more minutes here to keep going before I pull us back together. I just have a couple slides to wrap up and then going to hand it back to Tiffany, but we'll just give you another maybe 2 minutes here to make some progress on your map. And feel free to ask any other, put any other questions in the chat if I can answer them here in the next couple of minutes as you're working through it. Okay, at least I'm just reading back up through the chat. I wish I lived in a work world where we had more than me as a subject matter expert. Well, you'll be able to process map quickly then, I guess, as a result. But yes. Okay, let's just take Another couple seconds here, maybe finish up the step that you're on, and Tiffany, why don't we just have 5 minutes left, so I'm just gonna move us forward to close out and then hand it back over to you. So maybe if we can go to the next slide here. Just wanted to talk for a minute about, and you have these slides so you can reference some tips for analyzing your process for improvement opportunities. So on the next slide, the next couple slides, just have some pointers for you. This slide here, the tip is to look for the 8 wastes. So the 8 wastes is a concept within Lean Six Sigma, which is an industry standard process improvement methodology that's focused on streamlining processes. So how do you make processes more efficient? And it really helps us to look for ways to reduce how long a process is taking or why we have errors that are occurring. These are good places to look in your current process. Do you have work that's waiting for somebody to pick it up? Do you have a lot of, moving work back and forth between people? A lot of, issues sometimes, and just stuff isn't done right the first time, and we have to keep going back and correcting it. On the next slide, Tiffany, just a few more suggestions on once you have your process mapped, areas of opportunity to simplify for efficiency. So again, to streamline and make the process quicker, as well as ways to improve the quality. So, when we talk about efficiencies, if we have a lot of handoffs in our process, that creates complexity. It also creates delay typically, right? So that's a good place to look, as well as if you have a lot of, requirements for decisions or approvals, that sometimes tends to hold processes up, as well as bottlenecks or queues of work. So again, just some tips here, some places to look on your process for ways to really streamline for efficiency, as well as how to start to identify what might be happening that's creating issues with the work that you're is being done today. On the next slide, just for your reference, just called out on our ordering a pizza for delivery process map, use those yellow call outs to note some of these areas for improvement opportunity, right? Here's where some of the issues are today in this process. And so we need to figure out how to do this process in a better way to eliminate those issues going forward. So again, just a way to sort of note those on the process map, the areas where our team really should focus for improvement. All right, so on the next slide, if you want to drop this in the chat and you're so inspired, hopefully you would, you've been inspired today to do some process mapping at your organization. I hope the answer to that question would be yes. And then our last couple slides here are just wrap up in terms of summarizing the benefits that we've talked about today, as well as the next slide, and just making sure you're, using the experts to develop the process map, so you get the real picture of how it's happening today. Otherwise, you aren't going to be truly able to identify the improvements that need to be made. So thank you so much for your time today. I hope you found some of this useful and applicable for you. On the last slide is my email address. If you have any questions, or do you want to just chat about this, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to chat more about this stuff. I love process improvement. It's my day job. So I'm happy to talk further. Thank you all for your time today. Back to you, Tiffany.
Thank you. Thanks, Sarah. That was awesome. I could certainly use this in my role as well. So I think we all learned a little bit today with process mapping. I want you to see, we just launched a quick survey. We ask that you please fill out the survey. It's just a few questions, but we're getting your feedback to see how the session was, what we could have changed for the session. We just want to hear from you. We want the voice of our customers to be heard very loudly. So please fill out the survey and let us know how we did. We appreciate you. We thank you. And we hope that you enjoyed this Skills Lab session, and we'll return again next year for VB Dev Days. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.